Okay, if you're watching this, then you're probably considering moving to Palm Coast at some point in the future, and there are plenty of reasons to move to Palm Coast. It's a great area to live in, but what I want to do in today's video is cover a couple of things, a couple of reasons why you wouldn't want to move to Palm Coast, and we're going to get after it in just a sec. What's up, everyone? My name's Thomas with Real Broker here in St. Augustine, Florida, and if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest here in Northeastern Florida, make sure you reach out to me and my team. All we try to do is give you the information so that you can make an educated decision on what you want to do, which is buy, sell, or invest here in the area. So in this video, I want to give you 5 reasons that you maybe don't want to move to Palm Coast. And we're going to cover things like the entertainment in Palm Coast. We're going to cover like the city and taxes and what's going on there. And we're also going to talk about the general area and the real estate market so that you have a better understanding of jumping into Palm Coast before you do it. So the first thing that I want to bring up, and this is something that I think everyone should know before moving to Palm Coast, we're going to address some things for different groups of people looking to buy later in the video, but the first thing that you need to know about moving to Palm Coast is that it really is a slow going city. So if you've ever been to the area, if you've visited St. Augustine, if you've been to Jacksonville, they are all different gears for the most part. If you're in Jacksonville, that's a metropolitan area, you're going to be in 4th gear, 5th gear, depending where you are, you know, if you're talking about a manual transmission here. If you're in St. Augustine, I'm going to say that's going to be a 3rd gear. Around this time of the year is probably a 4th gear, so you're going a little bit faster. If you're going down to Palm Coast, that's probably going to be a 2. It's, you know, 1's probably a very rural area, but a 2 is just like a suburban residential area. Every home is pretty much identical in terms of the size and the lot size that it's on, and there's really not too much difference between the neighborhoods. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that you need to know about Palm Coast, aside from some of the rules that I'm going to cover here in the next points. But one of the biggest things is that like the nightlife, the entertainment, the speed of the city is not really there for what you would consider to be like a normal city. So if you're looking for like great restaurants, you're looking for a nightlife, you're looking for something fun to do all the time, Palm Coast isn't going to be exactly the best option for that. Are there fun things to do? Of course. There's a whole, you know, there's festivals and there's good restaurants, but you're going to be going to the same places over and over again. There's not going to be very much variety, because they just haven't hit that point where they have a whole bunch of commercial development, a whole bunch of retail space opening up. Now, luckily, you're between St. Augustine, you're between Daytona, so you have that option. You can also go over to Flagler Beach, which has a little bit more options in terms of nightlife and dining. And you're just far enough away. So that's one of the great things about Palm Coast, is that you're close enough to everything, but you're still kind of secluded from everything. You're not having to deal with some of the issues like Flagler Beach or St. Augustine sees, especially during the tourism season. So overall, Palm Coast is more of a quieter residential area. There's really only like 2 main roads that you're going to find the majority of your shopping on. That's going to be Palm Coast Parkway on the north side, and that's going to be Route 100 on the southern side of Palm Coast. And that's where pretty much all of your major retailers are going to be. Super Target out there, and there's going to be a handful of other restaurants like a Planet Fitness, all that kind of stuff out on Route 100. On Palm Coast Parkway, you're going to have like a Publix, you're going to have a couple of other shopping centers, a hospital off Route 100, but really there's not an exciting part of Palm Coast. There's really one space that you can go to. It's called European Village. Looks exactly like it sounds like. It's supposed to mimic a little European village. It's pretty much right before you go over into the over the intercoastal onto the beach side of Palm Coast, and it has a couple of cute restaurants, nice little wine bars within the little community there. It makes it very walkable, and it makes it feel like you're in a little European city. That's really the only draw in terms of like nightlife that Palm Coast is going to have. So if you're looking for a faster speed, Palm Coast may not be the place for you. The good thing is if you're like, hey, you know what, I don't mind driving 30 or 40 minutes, you have a ton of options available. You have Flagler Beach, St. Augustine, and you have Daytona Beach, all within about a 45-minute drive of Palm Coast, depending where you're at. So you do have those options, and you're still far enough away. The next thing I want to talk about is really how the city manages itself. So if you're looking at the city of Palm Coast and you're looking at the real estate prices, you're going to see that the prices for real estate are actually pretty affordable when you're comparing it to St. Johns County or a lot of the surrounding counties, maybe Volusia, or you're looking at Putnam. You're going to see that Palm Coast is pretty affordable compared to the rest of Florida and northeastern Florida in general. But that's because of one of the reasons I just covered, you know, the nightlife, not really having a whole bunch of stuff to do there. They're really attracting a different type of person to go to Palm Coast. So when I mentioned bang for your buck in Palm Coast or in the county of Flagler, you're going to see that the median sales price is $380,000. Moving from South Florida, and they got a home for $380,000, over 2,000 square feet, 2 stories, good sized lot, pretty much everything a family could need. You can definitely find here in Palm Coast. Really anyone could need here in Palm Coast. You have single story homes. Pretty much the majority of homes are going to be single story homes. Most of them are going to be single families. There are some townhomes. There's maybe a handful of condos within the area, but they're more going to be on the beach side than on the main city of Palm Coast. So that's one thing that really is a drawing factor of Palm Coast, is that the prices are much lower than our surrounding areas. If you're looking at St. Johns County, you can almost bet that's going to be about $100,000 more expensive. I think the median sale price last month was $484,000 for St. Johns County. So a huge difference. But at the end of the day, you do have the city of Palm Coast, which in general acts like a giant HOA. And because of that, the taxes are actually much more expensive in Palm Coast than in general if you're looking at St. Johns County. On average in St. Johns County, if you're looking at your purchase price, your taxes are going to be round about 1.4% of your purchase price. So just for easy math here, if you're looking to buy a $500,000 home, your taxes are going to be roughly $7,000 per year. Now, if you're looking in Palm Coast, your taxes are going to be about 1.9% of your purchase price, so almost 2%. So using that same $500,000 home, your taxes could be somewhere between $9,000 and $10,000 for that home, comparatively just 30 minutes south of St. Johns County. So that is one thing to keep in mind, is that your annual taxes are going to be more expensive than the majority of the areas within northeastern Florida and within Flagler County as a whole. Now, the city of Palm Coast acts as an HOA, right? So if you're not a fan of an HOA, Palm Coast is probably not the place for you. There are some big negatives that come with that. I had someone that moved there, and they had a, hey, we clean floors, and we professionally clean floors and tiles and carpets and all that kind of stuff. And they had a van where they kept all their equipment, and they had their lettering on the side. Now, that is 100% allowed in Palm Coast if you park that car in a garage. If it's behind a fence, if it's not visible from the street, you're allowed to do it. But if you park your car in the driveway, like many Floridians do, we don't have basements, so we have to put all our storage stuff in the garage. Most people park in the driveway. You are not allowed to have any type of commercial lettering on your vehicle at all. So you have to have that covered up. So solution for some people is just to buy some white magnets, throw it on their car, and call it a day. Now, what can happen is your neighbors can complain, or the city can drive around and find that you're parking your car technically illegally because no commercial vehicles are allowed to be in your driveway. So they're going to send you a letter, potentially a fine, if you do not correct the action, which is, especially when you're buying a single family home outside of an HOA, you wouldn't expect to have this kind of pushback from the city. Like, hey, I'm paying taxes, I'm paying a higher tax base than a lot of people around me, so why should I have to listen to this silly rule? That was actually on the ballot, I think, last year to change, so that contractors, people who work on your AC and your plumbing, can just park in their driveway like everyone else in Florida. But it didn't pass. So we'll see how that goes in the future. I think as Palm Coast starts to change more and more, like it has these past 5 years, that rule will be in the past. But as of right now, it still stands. Aside from that, you also have rules like, hey, if your grass is getting too long, if your lawn is unkept in general, like your shrubs and bushes, you're going to get a letter from the city, right? And if you don't correct it, could be a potential fine as well. That's not exactly ideal. I'm not saying I want everyone to have a shitty looking yard, but at the end of the day, I do like things looking pretty nice, and I can appreciate that side of it, but I don't want someone telling me what I can or can't do with the property I'm paying for and the taxes that I'm paying. If the taxes are paid up, my mortgage is paid, I don't really see how anyone can say unless they're going to come and do it themselves. So that bothers me, but it may not bother you. Maybe you like that uniformity, right? And of course, there are people who still They still don't take care of it, right? But in general, the majority of Palm Coast is pretty well kept because of these rules. Another rule, and of course there's caveats to this rule, right? If you have like an RV or if you have a boat, you can have those, but they just can't be visible from the road. So if you have a 6-foot fence, your boat better be shorter than 6 feet, or you're gonna get a letter from the city. If you have an RV, you can park it in your driveway, but only for the days, and I think it's 3 days, I could be wrong on that, don't quote me, but I believe it's 3 days you can park your RV in the driveway for loading and unloading when you're going on trips. Aside from that, you can't see it from the road. That is pretty much the main rule here. So that is one of the biggest negatives of living in Palm Coast, and this covers pretty much for every age group in terms of buying. You're either going to like this or you're going to not like this, right? So I'm probably being a little bit more extreme than it actually is, but I'd hate for me to help you out. You go buy a house in Palm Coast and then someone gives you a call because you parked a boat behind your fence or it's in your driveway for a couple days, and they say, well, my realtor didn't tell me that. How did I not know? It's just, this is important to know about a place you're going to buy. Okay, and the third reason that you may not want to move to Palm Coast is going to be the job market. Now, many of the people that are watching this video, many of the people that are moving to Palm Coast are looking to retire. It's been named one of the top retirement areas in the entire country for several years in a row, and that's for good reason, right? It's a peaceful, quiet town, right? And that's what a lot of people in the retirement ages are looking for. And also the central location to Orlando, to Jacksonville, to St. Augustine, to Daytona, to Flagler Beach makes it a pretty great place to live because you can go out and experience and do all these things and still be far enough away from it where you're not affected by the heavy tourism and just the overall cost of living in those areas. The reason I touched on that is because the third reason you should move to Palm Coast is because the job market is really not there, right? There's not a whole bunch to do unless you're in like the hospitality industry, if you're in the healthcare industry, or if you're like a builder. There's really, outside of that, there isn't much of a big employer in the area. You're more than likely going to have to go to Daytona. You're going to have to go to Jacksonville. St. Augustine's kind of in the same boat in a lot of ways, but our hospitality industry is much, much bigger. All of our industries are much, much bigger, I'd say, than Palm Coast. Or you might even have to commute to Orlando, which would be like disastrous. I would never want to do that to you. But that is the truth of living in Palm Coast. There's really, like I said before, a lot of people are going there to retire. We're talking about all like essential services for people, and outside of that, there's really, not a major employer that you could look for. Like where if you're going to a Jacksonville or Orlando or a Tampa or a Miami, you're not going to find those employers here in Palm Coast. And maybe that changes in the future, but I don't think the residents of Palm Coast want to see that change. They like it the way it is. They want to keep it a slower, sleepy town. And every day you'll see people complain about traffic in Palm Coast on the local Facebook page, but I don't know what they're talking about. I wish I did. And I'm not trying to like fluff the numbers because I'm a realtor. I want you to buy a house. You can do it! It's just me driving through the area. People say the same thing in St. Augustine. I'm like, yeah, during Night of Lights, it's really bad. During peak tourist season, it's really bad. But you know what? Like, I've lived here the majority of my life. It's always been bad. And you know what you did? You just didn't go downtown. You drove around it. Like, it's just been, that's what the locals do. It's like, I compare this, and I say this a lot. It's like being a New Yorker and going to Times Square. Like, you might go once, right? But there's just so many people. It's really just commercialized. It's not something you want to do. You'll go when friends are in town, and that's pretty much it. That's one of the reasons that I wouldn't want to live in Palm Coast, is because the job market and the surrounding area, there's really not a whole bunch to do. So that being said, like Palm Coast, you're not going to have people visiting like crazy there. They're going to be able to, go to St. Augustine on the off-peak. They're going to be able to go to Daytona during the off-peak. And they're going to be able to enjoy these areas without having to deal with the problems. So Palm Coast is probably not the place for you if you're like a career-driven individual, if you're in the midst of growing, your business, your career, your lifestyle. Palm Coast is going to be a tougher sell when it comes down to that. And the fourth reason that you may not want to move to Palm Coast is going to be the weather in general. Now, we live in northeastern Florida. Aside from like San Diego, California, we have like some really favorable weather compared to the rest of the United States. I think we have 250 days of favorable weather, which is anything considered between 70 degrees and 80 degrees, which is fantastic, right? During the winter, it gets a little bit of chill. So if you're, from up north and you're looking for that slight change of season, still want to put on a coat, you can definitely do that in Palm Coast. So that is actually one of the good things, but Some people may find that to be a negative, but along with that Florida weather that we all know and love, there are also hurricanes, right? And hurricanes, if you've never been in one, can be very scary. Now, a lot of times we know about a week or maybe even a week and a half in advance of where this hurricane is going and in roundabout where it's going to go. You know, we're not going to know the exact path, but we're going to give they gave a cone essentially, and like, hey, it's going to go somewhere within this region. We're not exactly sure where, and we'll keep you updated. So typically, you know, about a week in advance, you can make your decision if you want to evacuate or not, depending on your house, depending on where you are in terms of the storm's path, depending on the severity of the storm, right? You can make all these decisions in advance. So that's one, I guess one shining light in terms of like, okay, hurricanes suck, but the good thing is living in Palm Coast, compared to the rest of the state of Florida, the data shows that you guys are actually pretty safe. Now, St. Johns County, Duval County, a little bit safer. Flagler County is going to be, slightly more dangerous than its counterparts in the Northeast. Volusia County doing a little bit worse, and as you go further south, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So let's take a look at this map here that I have for you. We're going to take a look at the past 124 years of hurricane landfalls within the state of Florida. So if you're taking a look at this map, you can see here in the northeastern part, you can see the 4 and the 4, 4, and 6. So the northern 4 is Duval County, that's Jacksonville. The 4 in the middle is going to be St. Johns County, where St. Augustine is. And then 6 is going to be Flagler County, where Palm Coast is. So you can see that if you're looking at hurricane risk versus the rest of the state, northeastern Florida is going to be the winner, right? It's just a much safer area to be compared to the Panhandle, compared to South Florida. And now, Tampa just got hit like 3 times this year, so this may not even be 100% accurate. But you can see that being in northeastern Florida is going to be the better option for you just based on the past 124 years. Now, if you go even further south of Flagler County, you're going to see Volusia County, which has 8 major hurricanes making landfall over the past 124 years. Once again, not the worst thing in the world, but at the end of the day, if we're evaluating risk, we're bringing up problems why you shouldn't move to the area, I feel like I gotta tell you this right here. Okay, and the 5th reason that you may not want to move to Palm Coast is that it's really geared at this point in time towards retirees. Like I said earlier in the video, it's been named the #1 retirement community, the city of Palm Coast, within the nation, a couple different publishers in the nation. So there's a reason for that. It comes down to affordability, it comes down to the pace of life, it comes down to the services that are available. There's a whole bunch of good reasons why it's the #1 retirement area in the entire state of Florida. Most of that's going to hinge around the affordability and just the overall niceness of Palm Coast and what you get. Everyone gets an 80 by 120 lot with about a 1,800 to 2,200 square foot home, so it's more than comfortable for a lot of people. You still have some distance from your neighbor. You're not right on top of them like you are here in St. Augustine. So there's a lot of benefits of why people want to move here and retire here. And the affordability is going to be the #1 reason. But if you're not looking to retire, if you're not looking for a slower pace of life, then Palm Coast is going to be the opposite of what you're looking for, because it is a slower pace of life. Now, you're able to, like I said before in the video, you're able to travel to all these different places within 30 to 45 minutes, which makes Palm Coast a great place to live if you want to be far enough removed from that. Now, if you're living in the state of Florida, many of my people that are moving from South Florida up to our area here, they know that pretty much if you're driving anywhere over 20 minutes here in the state of Florida, that's a long distance. If you lived in any metropolitan area outside of the state of Florida, well, let's say not outside of the state of Florida, but any metropolitan area, you're talking Miami, New York, Philly, DC, Baltimore, any of those areas, a commute less than 45 minutes is golden. Most people are commuting 45 minutes to sometimes an hour and a half. I lived in Brooklyn, and I had to get from Sunset Park to the Lower East Side in the Tribeca area, and I was just getting on the D train, which is an express train, 2 stops to downtown, and it took me 45 minutes if I got on the train at the right point from my door to their door, right? And that's walking, hitting a subway, walking again. Not a fun thing, right? But that was actually a great commute. A lot of my friends, I had friends that were commuting from Jersey to go into Brooklyn. They had to take the path into Manhattan, then they had to take a subway from Manhattan to Brooklyn, and they had to walk to their site. So it took him, 2 hours to get to work some days and 2 hours to get home. not a great commute at all. So really, if you're moving to the area, that's going to be one of the better things, is that, hey, it's only like 20, 30 minutes. You can get most places. But just so you know, most people here in the state of Florida, they don't really want to drive if it's over 30 minutes, Now, if you're living in Miami or Tampa, you're probably more used to that metropolitan lifestyle. But all the rest of us that live outside of those big areas, and Orlando, forgot to mention Orlando, we're really used to a 20-minute commute, and that's starting to change. So a lot of Floridians complain about the traffic. But if you are looking to retire, I think Palm Coast offers a ton of great things for retirees. I've helped several people relocate to Palm Coast just to retire for that exact reason, and that's because it affords that lifestyle. You get a more affordable housing, you still have access to the beach, you still have access to great restaurants, whether it's on Flagler Beach, downtown St. Augustine, or in Daytona Beach. And then you also have a whole bunch of recreational activities within Palm Coast, such as, and a lot of it's going to be biking or pickleball's blowing up, by the way. I don't know what's going on there. I love playing it, but I mean, it just seems like there's pickleball courts everywhere. Pickleball courts, little hiking trails throughout the area, kayaking, nature preserves, all that kind of stuff you're going to be able to find here in Palm Coast, which is honestly a big benefit if you're looking to retire. I just need to bring it to everyone's attention that's not looking to retire, so this may not be the spot for them. So guys, that is it. I covered 5 things, and I also went through a whole bunch of different rabbit holes as well, just to kind of give you the fullest picture I could of reasons that you shouldn't move to Palm Coast. If you have any questions about living in Palm Coast, moving to Palm Coast, maybe even considering St. Augustine, all you got to do is reach out to me directly. Like I said before, all me and my team try to do is give you the information, just like we did in this video, so that you can make an educated decision on what you want to do, which is buy, sell, invest in Northeastern Florida. Until next time, guys, I'll see you.